Hi everyone, it's lovely to have Bella back on the podcast today, and we're going to be discussing how to study German for home educators. Bella is currently tutoring with Arise doing beginner German, and the feedback from this class has been really excellent. And it's just lovely to hear feedback from students who are really enjoying the class and are thriving in learning these new skills. Bella, how have you found the first year of tutoring with us?
Yeah, well, it's been a learning curve, to be honest, because I've been working with adults for the last 10 years or so. I started out in high school, as I said in the last podcast. The learning curve has partly been seeing adjusting it to a high school level, not stretching them too much. But at the same time, I want to challenge my students to enjoy learning and to make the most of it. And I think this has worked. We're in the middle of you know, some adjustments, but it's been a rich semester. So we've done two-thirds of now. We have about 10 classes left, and in many ways they've grown a lot. So I hold them accountable. We do vocab revision every week, and I think that's not always so fun. But it's a little bit like, I don't know, for those of you who learn instruments, this idea of, I'm going to play that piece to my piano teacher next time. So
Mhm.
and I think having this structure has really helped us. We work with an online program called Nico's Weg, and we're working with a young guy from Spain who arrives in Germany without any German, and we learn with him as he moves through culture. And I think it's a really good resource that we'll also be using for the second course, and it's also helping us to structure our homework and then to bring what we're learning back. So it's flipped classroom. That's what we've been experimenting with this year, and I think on the whole it's worked really well. We're making adaptations for the next semester, and yeah, I'm curious. I think all of them have grown to some extent. We have
Yeah.
different levels in the class, and I think it's we're not. It's the idea is not to get everybody at the same level, but it's
Mhm.
um, meeting people where they're at and then taking them to the next level. And this is definitely working. So I'm glad to see that.
I had an interesting conversation recently about languages and home educators. And one of the interesting things that came out of that conversation was the different motivations that families have for learning another language. As a multilingual person yourself, what are the motivators for you?
To learn a different language, you mean?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I geeked out about that a little bit on our last podcast, so I might bring a bit of a different angle. But I think to sum up what we said last time, and then bringing a new idea into it. So this idea of learning learning a new system that is so very different from our way of thinking.
Mhm.
And with that system comes a whole horizon of a philosophy of how people see the world. And recently, I've also been thinking that so I also work as a counselor, and clients who come to me and want to change in some ways. I'm noticing that the clients who make changes in their lives, who don't just come and want to talk about what's hard, but who also want to make changes, they're the ones that either learn an instrument or that are somehow have been involved in sports or that have learned something over a longer period of time where they had to invest and be resilient. And I think language learning is a great way of
Mhm.
learning to be resilient. Resilient in a way of, it's a bit like, we're just about to get a dog. So I can't say much yet, but this idea of, whatever the weather, we need to go out with this dog. We need to walk it. And it's a bit like that with language learning. It's, yeah, this grammar chapter is really hard, but we're going to study it anyway. And we're going to build on what we already know. And I think the real reward with languages is that it's not just you're learning something in your head, but actually there is literature in that language. You can start. So with me, for example, I'm learning Dutch. So I'm able to listen to podcasts now. I'm able to overhear conversations in a cafe between people who speak Dutch. I would be able to travel to the Netherlands now and order my coffee. So those kind of things. Um, I think it's important. So the motivation, yes, exams are a motivation, but I think they're not a great motivation, not the only motivation to learn a particular language.
Yeah.
So what's motivating me to learn languages is the motivation to actually be in touch with somebody and communicate in that language. And often there's a connection between, you know, languages where I like the sound, or languages where I have some kind of connections with, let's say, missionaries from that country. So, I grew up with some Dutch missionaries in our family of churches back in Austria. So I really enjoyed that when they came to preach and I heard a Dutch accent in German, and I thought, oh, that's a nice accent.
Mhm.
So there were some kind of connections with that culture from a very early age for me. And, over the years, I've met interesting people from the Netherlands, and I've read books about the resistance movement. And I think it's similar if we can connect with the culture beyond the language, or the cultures, because in the German speaking world, there's at least three cultures that are connected with German. I'm Austrian, so Austrian culture there is quite a difference from German culture and Swiss culture again. So this idea that we want to grow resilient in learning something, we want to connect with other people, and we want to be motivated, not just because we want good marks, but we want to master something, and we want to continue learning and continue having that growth mindset. And that's my main motivation to continue. Even now, I don't have to do exams. I just enjoy it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's really interesting, especially what you're saying about the resilience and that growth mindset. That is in the age of AI and how that's affecting learning and how we're seeing the effect of just the hyper-connected world we live in, social media, all these different things, all these very diverse ideas. But in general, it's eroding that cognitive resistance and that ability to learn, but learning a language is the actual opposite of that. It's that growth mindset. You're building resilience. You're having to do something difficult, that takes time and doesn't give you those immediate results. And I agree. I do not think to sit an exam is a great reason for for
Yeah.
learning something, um, and that and it's an idea that to try and inspire our teens to see their education and their learning beyond that exam and into that wider, much more life-giving, richer experience.
And there will be some subjects where, so for me, I wasn't great in the sciences, and that was like, okay, I have to get through it. And
Mhm.
again, that was about resilience. But I think generally to be on the lookout for things that we enjoy learning about, I think is a good. And if somebody really dislikes the sound of German, then probably German is not the language for them. Yeah. So I think just listen a little bit to, oh, am I interested in this culture? Am I interested in, especially in the Christian context, what God is doing? Am I interested in the history in that part? The German speaking history is also quite burdened with what happened during the Second World War, of course. So there is I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of English speakers for a while didn't want to learn German, and I can understand that. Yeah, and there's been some healing over the years, and now there is, I think, more openness again to. I've noticed, especially around sports and the Euros in Germany, there was like, okay, there was kind of more connection again, and I'm really grateful for that. But yeah, knowing that most of my students are English speakers in the first language, and my people were on the other side during the war, even if it was a while ago. But um, I think, yeah, I think that's a part where German has been quite unpopular and quite rightly so. Yeah,
Mhm.
I think we're in a different age, and there's
Mm.
there's interest again in learning this language, which I'm excited about.
It's a fascinating language to learn. It's so different from a, 'cause growing up. We all did French at school, and Spanish has become more popular, but all those kind of more Romance languages that are rooted in Latin, Germany is just so absolutely different from your French, your Italian, your Spanish, which makes it it's really fascinating. I personally find interesting the how language develops over time and the different roots and how you can trace back different languages and those different strands. And and I find it just really interesting that German's sitting right up against geographically Italy, French, but they're so different. Um,
And there's
oh,
quite and I think that's something that, can you still hear me, Emma?
yeah.
So I think knowing that both English and German are Germanic languages,
Mhm.
they have they have the same roots, and they've developed in different directions. And for a long time, they were actually quite similar. But Latin has and French have influenced English in a way that they have not in which they have not influenced German. So now I teach a reading course at the university to help PhD students learn German. And one of the first things I do with them is to say, actually, a lot of what you know in English there is a connection. We call them cognates, so words that have equivalents in German, and realizing how many cognates there actually are. Because at the beginning, it's often, oh, I don't understand a word. But then, we start reading in that course at university. What I do in the first lesson is I give them Psalm 23 without telling them. And just by looking at the psalm, they're able to work out, also knowing the context. By the end of the lesson, they're able to translate the whole passage just using
Wow.
cognates, which is really exciting for me to see. And it's a great experiment for students to see, actually, I already know a lot about German
Mhm.
without knowing it. So I think, yes, we need to learn new things, but for English speakers, know something about German before they even start learning
That's amazing. Is this your German survival
it.
course for university students?
Yeah,
It sounded when I first read that you taught
yeah.
this survival course, it made me think of Bear Grylls, but it's obviously not a Bear Grylls class.
Yeah,
What
in a
is
way
it?
it is for my I this is my seventh year of so I'm a teaching fellow at the University of Edinburgh. I teach a small German course for students who need to read academic theological German, and who most of them don't know a word of German when they come to me, or they've done maybe a few weeks of Duolingo and feel really frustrated with not getting where they want to get. So it's a very specialized course in helping people to read German basically within, so a course is 10 weeks. So within 20 weeks, I teach them to get to a point where they can read Barth, Bonhoeffer.
Oh
And
wow.
it sounds almost undoable. And when I applied for the job, I thought, oh, that sounds like quite an aim. But I've developed a framework where actually this is possible. And because it's my seventh year now, I see, we have 10 sessions for the 10 lessons for the beginners course, and then in the following semester 10 lessons for the intermediate course. And yeah, we translate Luther, Barth, so
Wow.
and the real theologians, and almost right from the beginning. So it's certain skills that
Yeah.
they train in. So with my German students at Arise, of course, we also train in speaking German, and we train in basic writing skills. All of that is not relevant for my university students because it's just about reading.
Hmm.
But nevertheless, going from zero to a point where you can read a complex academic text
Yeah.
is fascinating. And yeah, I'm proud of my students, but also of the framework I've developed. And I think I love theology. So the combination of German and theology is a real niche for me.
Hmm.
Thinking of maybe offering that outside the university in the future, thinking of setting up a website, because there is a lot of theological students who need German for their research.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
There
maybe
absolutely is. It's
something like that. So I'm still thinking about it. Yeah.
when you were talking about the impact that the Second World War had on British speakers and their desire to learn German, I was actually thinking about that actually when you go way back, German scholars have such a rich heritage of theology,
Mm.
and that that we can get stuck at the 1940s, but actually German culture and German academia is so rich theologically, literary, that it is a language that is worth putting in that hard work.
Yeah, and
So
I'm
yeah.
thinking, when we think in both in terms of the UK and the US, there were a lot of early German-speaking immigrants in the US, and the
Mhm.
story goes, and I think that's been verified, that German nearly became the language of the US, and
Yeah.
I think that's one thing. So there's a lot of German heritage
Mhm.
in the US and in the UK, for the um, yeah, Queen Victoria had spoke German, I think, growing up with her
Mhm.
mum, and there were real connections with Germany there. The Christmas tree came over
Yeah.
from Germany, so there was a rich cultural influence, but also, um, yeah, the Windsors even are connected with kind of they have German ancestors, and I think that was hard during the war. But
Yeah.
there is a connection both in the American context as much as the British context
Hmm.
with German culture, and I think that's often forgotten, but it is there.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, for the intermediate German class that you'll be offering after summer, how will this build on the beginner class?
Yeah, so the beginner class was so I work because I come from a European framework with the European frame of reference.
Hmm.
So we're starting at A1, and then the next course, which is kind of the beginner's level, and the next course I'm working with the students to arrive at A2, and then I think it's B1 that you need for National 5. So that would be the next step up after that. And yeah, so A2 builds on, it's still quite basic when it comes to grammar. So we're going to focus a lot on verbs and a lot of on the case system, which is fairly well. Yeah, we have 4 cases in German, and it's slightly complex, but once you know how it works, you can work it out. So grammar-wise, definitely cases and verbs are going to be at the center. But the program takes you through different. I think it's done quite cleverly. So it basically we follow this young man around who arrives in Germany without a word of German. He's lost his bag. He doesn't have an address. He wants to stay with his aunt, but he doesn't have an address. And then he meets this lady and her niece, and they help him to go to the police station. And then we follow him around a little bit as he starts to settle down and starts to stay with an elderly lady for a few weeks to find a job, and then he's making friends, and we follow him around as he goes to a football training, and he has a doctor's appointment, and um, is helping to babysit somebody. So I really like this idea that of course, it's all made up. It's not
Hmm.
a documentary, but there is a sense of we're there with him and learning German with him.
Hmm.
Um, and we're going to continue doing that in the second course. So I've got a little list here of topics that we're going to cover. So Nico's going to play football with a group of friends that he's made. He's going to injure himself, and he's going to go to a doctor, and that's going to look at his legs. So there's something around health. We're going to learn about hobbies and home life and intergenerational life. So Nico's making friends with a young girl from Syria who's a refugee, and we're going to learn a little bit about what it means for her to live in a culture where she's waiting. She's an asylum seeker. She's waiting for a positive report so she can stay, and just seeing the differences are. Living kind of in very small, confined quarters with her family, and what that means, intergenerational living together. Nico comes from quite a rich family, so we see the differences between. So I think it's really cleverly done. We're
Yeah.
going to travel. We're going to see him talk about social settings. We're going to watch people at a restaurant ordering food. But there's a little bit more complex topics like, what was life like in the past? What is it like now? We're going to learn a little bit about stress, about culture, and then I'm also going to add something on the Christian faith. So we're going to continue looking at some Christian traditions within the German-speaking world, but also looking at basic how can I read short parts of the Bible,
Hmm.
and talking about faith or talking about church in quite basic terms. That's not part of the curriculum, but I'm adding that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, still quite basic, but the
Hmm.
topics are a little bit more complex. And yeah, every week I talked about flipped classroom. So what the students do is they get 2 videos and 2 sets of exercises. So takes about half an hour to 45 minutes for each to be completed. And it involves grammar, vocabulary, and it all relates to Nico's story
Hmm.
and his experiences. So I think rather than just dry grammar, it is in the context of
Yeah.
what is it like to be in a German speaking country. And yeah, I think it's an excellent resource, and I still can't believe that it's free and accessible for everyone. So we're using that as the backbone of our
Hmm.
course, and then we're gonna work with some of what they bring from the homework into the class, but then we're also gonna kind of go deeper with the grammar. I like playing some games with them or do some interactive exercises. And then, yeah, there's always a there's always a vocabulary revision, which will be extended to vocab and grammar next semester. So at the beginning of each class, they get 10 words from the vocab list they have to learn. Again, that's part of the curriculum. And then I'm testing them on those words. And again, it's a bit like, after a week of practicing your guitar, you then, or piano, you then go and play the piece. And I think it's good to hold them accountable, but at the same time, also for them to see if I'm putting in the work,
Hmm.
then most of the time that I get good results.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe not every week, but that's not the aim. The aim is to give what I can, and then to see how the language muscle grows over time.
Hmm.
And that's exciting to see. Students are at different levels, but when they put in the work, it pays off. Mm.
That sounds really good. Excuse me. Got a bit of a cold. Um, we have put on the class that the beginner German is a prerequisite. But if you have a family who has done some German, would they be able to sign up for the intermediate
Yeah,
class?
yeah. So we've even had a family join us for kind of in the beginners class after the first semester, and that's worked really well. What I would suggest is so on the website that we're using, Nico's Weg, and we can put that in the links. There is a placement test where people can just check which level they're at,
Mhm.
and then I think the placement test could then guide the decision of
Yeah.
whether it's the which of the two courses is the more appropriate one.
Hmm.
So I think that's a good starting point because we're working with exactly the same material and it's the placement test is free. I would
Hmm.
suggest doing that, and I'll let you know about the link, Emma, and so
Excellent.
you
Yes. So
can,
we'll
yeah.
link to the placement
So
test.
yeah, if people can do the placement test, and then they'll see are they if it's A1, then the beginner's course is the right one.
Hmm.
Um, if it's if they're ready for A2, then that is the level we're at for the,
Brilliant.
for the intermediate course.
Your German classes have had a proven track record for preparing students for Nat 5 German in the Scottish system.
Mm.
So this would be an excellent choice for families looking to prepare teen. So yeah, would this be an excellent choice for families looking to prepare teen for either the IGCSE German or for in Scotland for Nat 5 German?
Yeah, so I for a number of years I worked at the Edinburgh College. I worked with kind of late people in their late teens, early adult years, and my colleague who taught the next course up said your students are well prepared,
Hmm.
not just well prepared because they know their stuff, but also there was a sense of that they were more adventurous with trying out language, trying to understand, even if they didn't get every single word.
Yeah.
I think my students tend to be quite resilient with
Hmm.
um, being confronted with something that is too hard for them and still making the best of it or the
Yeah.
most of it. So what I regularly do is I would give them a text where we haven't prepared the vocabulary and I say, what do you understand? Let's look at this together. Oh yes, this word means something. We had that last week in our vocabulary revision, or this sounds a little bit like English. And then we work on the text together, realizing how much they actually know, and then each of them picks a few words that they would like to know. So rather than translate, and I don't use translation as a method, but rather than translating every single word, what we do is we try and build the muscle from depending on where they're at. So, student A might take 10 words with them that student A or B already knows. So they might take 10 other words, but this builds yeah, resilience is again the word that I would like to use without overusing it. This idea that I can be confronted with real language without thinking, oh, we haven't done this yet.
Hmm.
Because when you go to Germany or to Austria or to Switzerland, people are not going to speak at the level that you need. They are going to just speak whatever they need to say. They're going to say, and you need to find ways of communicating with them by asking, saying, "Oh, can you please slow this down?" Or you can say, "I'm only a beginner. Can you?" So yeah, it's swimming in real water. It's swimming at the deep end. So not jumping in at the deep end, but slowly going in with a guide, which is me. And we're also starting on the other end of, so if you have this idea of the swimming pool, so we're going in on this side sometimes and sometimes on this side. So, on both ends, sometimes we're looking at the basic building blocks of language
Hmm.
like grammar and vocab. but quite often we are listening to a song in German and we talk about what we've understood, or we're looking at lyrics, or we read a text about, you know, a German festival or a tradition at Easter or whatever, which is more complex than the beginners level would offer, because this is what I want to prepare them for. I want them
Yeah.
to see this is what real language looks like.
Which also makes it more interesting as well. So 'cause if you're just sticking at the beginner, it's a bit it can be a bit boring. But
Yeah, and I think some
see,
of it,
it's a bit more. It makes it much more interesting and real life.
yeah, I think it is interesting, but it's also more scary for some students. So
Mhm.
students who are used to knowing everything and wanting to know everything, and want so I think, it's with languages, you don't have much control over what you're encountering, and that can be quite scary. But I
Yeah.
think it's a good way of practicing being confronted with things that are different, and then to looking at, oh, what are the structures I already know, and how can I use them to yeah, to find a way through the jungle here, to take something with me that, it shouldn't be an overwhelming experience, but it will be an experience where I'm quite stretched at
Hmm.
the same time. And I think the course I'm trying to hold the balance between, and I've already said that before in our last podcast, but I think it's important to say it again. So the balance between, um, you know, kindness and support, and I believe you can do this. And on the other side, on the other hand, this idea of, okay, this is a stretching experience. And yes, it's going to take some time to go through your vocab list and to build that resilience muscle. And some of it isn't fun, but hopefully the overall experience is, wow, I've learned so much. I have a new skill now. I can travel to Austria, Germany, Switzerland, and I can maybe watch something at the cinema, or I can pick up a book in the bookstore, and I can actually understand some things here.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
yeah. And I think that's what my courses offer. Um, it's not, oh, you need to know exactly this word to be able to pass your exam. Yes, we're also preparing students for exams, but I want to prepare them for something beyond that,
Yeah.
not just the exam.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you so much, Bella, for your time. It's been lovely. I always enjoy speaking to you. You always bring something really interesting. Um, and below will be all the information, the links to Bella's intermediate German class and also to the placement tests. Thank you so much for your time with us today. Thank you.
Bye bye.